All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack the modern, honestly kind of incredible complexities of experience management, or XM. Now, I know you've likely heard the term, but the landscape is shifting at an absolute breakneck pace. We're entering an era where your target audience is no longer just human, which is wild, right? Trying to manage customer experience used to mean figuring out if a real person liked your store layout. Now it means figuring out if a bot likes your code. How you manage that dual experience is fundamentally going to define the success or failure of your organization. I am so excited to guide you through this today because the data we are looking at is completely reframing how we think about the modern customer journey.
We've got a great roadmap today. We'll be hitting 1. The experience economy, 2. Designing for human behavior, 3. Brand, CX, and UX, 4. Serving the machine customer, 5. The power of digital agents, and wrapping up with 6. A test and learn strategy. Let's get to it.
Section 1. The experience economy, beyond the transaction. So just to set our baseline here, we're no longer just selling goods or services, right? We are firmly operating in the experience economy. It's just not enough to provide a perfectly functional product anymore. The real competitive battleground, it's entirely shifted to how you make people feel when they interact with your brand. And that brings us to experience management, or XM. Simply put, this is the discipline of using experience data, that's your X data, and operational data, your O data, to measure and improve literally every single interaction people have with a company. Historically, business has only really looked at the hard numbers. But XM argues that if you're only looking at your operational metrics, you're basically flying blind. Companies that fail to measure both data sets are leaving a massive amount of money on the table, mostly because they completely miss the human context behind the raw numbers.
And here is exactly why. Traditional O data tells you what happened, the costs, accounting, sales, profitability. But you absolutely need the X data, the customer satisfaction, employee sentiment, the actual human emotions to understand exactly why it happened. Like, your O data might show that cart abandonment is spiking on your website. Okay, bad news. But it won't tell you why. It won't tell you that your customers are bailing because your checkout process requires them to dig up a password they created back in 2014 and they'd literally rather just give up. Combining X and O data, that gives you the predictive power to fix those deeply frustrating roadblocks before they ever actually hit your bottom line.
Moving right along. Section 2. Designing for human behavior, embracing complexity.
Okay, so if we're going to transition into the psychology of the human customer, we have to embrace their messy, emotional reality. If we truly want to manage experiences, we first have to admit that humans just aren't perfectly rational calculators. In fact, we are intuitive, self-centered, emotional, motivated, social, and hopeful. We rarely make these slow, perfectly logical decisions. Instead, we rely on mental rules of thumb. For instance, because we are so highly emotional, we tend to judge an entire experience based on what psychologists call the peak end rule. Basically, we only really remember the most extreme emotional peak of an interaction and how it ended. If you end a customer service call on a massive high note, they'll retroactively view the whole thing favorably, even if they had to wait on hold for 20 minutes listening to terrible elevator music to get there.
Think about a time you had super low expectations for a budget hotel, but then you walk in and the room is remarkably clean and welcoming. That immediate perception shifts your attitude, and that drives you to book with them again. That right there is the human experience cycle in action. Basically, 1. Expectations, 2. Perceptions, 3. Attitudes, and 4. Behaviors. Our expectations filter our immediate perceptions, which then harden into attitudes and ultimately drive our purchasing behaviors. So, if you want a customer to behave a certain way, like say renewing a massive B2B contract, you've got to reverse engineer it. Work backward through the cycle. What attitudes drive the behavior? What immediate perceptions create that attitude? And how do we design our touch points to meet or beat their pre-existing expectations? It is a continuous, deeply linked cycle.
Section 3. Brand, CX, and UX, aligning the disciplines.
Now, to actually manage that human experience cycle effectively, an organization has to align 3 very distinct disciplines that, let's be honest, usually operate in totally isolated silos. This is where companies trip up all the time. They have entirely different teams managing different parts of the exact same customer's brain. Look at this breakdown. Brand, CX, and UX all want to improve the customer journey, sure, but they own totally different metrics and funnel phases. Brand is out there driving pre-acquisition awareness, looking at brand health and purchase intent. Then CX takes over post-acquisition to drive loyalty. They're obsessing over CSAT scores, net promoter scores, and lifetime value. Meanwhile, UX is hyper-focused on the actual digital interaction, measuring task success and ease of effort. If these three teams aren't talking and sharing data, well, your customer is going to feel a massive disconnect. Imagine a luxury brand promising premium service, but their mobile app crashes constantly and their support team is totally unhelpful. The entire experience just shatters.
And here is the kicker. Without a singular vision tying those disciplines to your broader competitive strategy, your customer experience will just feel completely fragmented. You simply can't be everything to everyone. Your CX vision has to align perfectly with your corporate strategy. Are you going for operational excellence? Think of a low-cost, high-efficiency airline. In that case, your CX vision shouldn't be about highly personalized, white-glove service. It should be about making the whole process as fast and frictionless as humanly possible. Contrast that with a product leadership strategy, like Apple, where the experience is inherently tied to cutting-edge innovation and premium, beautiful design. The overarching corporate vision has to dictate the specific experience you're building.
All right, brace yourselves for Section 4, Serving the Machine Customer, the Plot Twist.
Just when you think you've figured out how to design for these messy, emotional humans, we hit a huge plot twist. Listen to this prediction from Gartner. By 2028, 70% of B2B tech buying decisions will be significantly influenced by AI agents and AI-informed human buyers. Wow, this is where experience management gets incredibly futuristic and, frankly, a little mind-bending. Your next buyer might not even be a person. That means your very first touchpoint is a machine. Think about that for a second. An AI agent acting on behalf of a human buyer is crawling your site, parsing your PDFs, comparing your specs against competitors, and building a shortlist before a human ever even speaks to your sales team. If your digital experience isn't optimized for that machine, you are basically invisible.
So suddenly, your content strategy needs a bit of a split personality. You have to serve the structured machine, which is craving JSON, APIs, CSVs, schema markup, and really well-structured HTML. But at the exact same time, you have to tell an emotional story to the human using blogs, case studies, and engaging videos. The machine does not care about your beautifully scored, emotionally resonant brand video. It just wants clean data to extract the facts. But remember those 6 human traits we talked about? The human buyer who eventually enters the funnel still desperately needs the story, the social proof, and the emotional connection. We are now tasked with designing digital experiences that satisfy both of these incredibly demanding audiences simultaneously.
Which brings us to Section 5, the power of digital agents scaling the experience.
So how do we practically pull this off? How do we execute this dual audience strategy across thousands of digital interactions without completely blowing up our support costs? This is the ultimate execution question for modern businesses right now. Because when digital experiences fail to serve either the specific needs of the human or the machine, the whole system breaks down. And every time a confused or frustrated customer abandons your site to pick up the phone and call a human support rep, your operational costs skyrocket. We need a way to offer personalized, contextual support without hiring a massive, incredibly expensive army of customer service reps.
The answer? Deploying intelligent digital agents directly onto our digital properties. And please, wipe the idea of those old-school, clunky chatbots from your mind, the ones that just make you want to scream agent into your keyboard. We are talking about advanced, context-aware AI. These digital agents provide in-the-moment digital context and intervention. They actively reduce contact center friction and error filings by actually solving problems right there on the web page. But they don't just put out fires. They guide users seamlessly through complex tasks and can even proactively increase product upsell and conversion rates. Imagine a user rapidly clicking around, obviously getting frustrated. An agent can intervene proactively, using their history and the exact page context to help them. This keeps the customer on a single digital channel, turning what used to be a massive support cost into a proactive revenue generator. It's an absolute game changer.
And finally, Section 6, a test and learn strategy, the Providence case study.
Let's ground all this high-level theory with a brilliant micro-narrative of organizational triumph from Providence Health. Because talking about optimization is easy, but actually rewiring a massive organization to do it effectively is really tough. To transform their digital patient experience, Providence intentionally structured their marketing team to balance 2 very different types of personalities, the rocks and the rock stars. The rocks are practical, deeply driven by empathy, and focused on iterative process improvement. The rock stars, they're your creative disruptors, focused on moonshot innovations and breaking the status quo.
Think about your own teams for a second. Do you have too many rock stars causing absolute chaos with unproven moonshots, or too many rocks holding back innovation by only making tiny, safe tweaks? You desperately need both, working in tandem to build a truly robust experience management culture.
So this perfectly balanced Providence team executed a tiered experimentation strategy, which they categorized beautifully as ponds, lakes, and oceans. They started with ponds, a small set of highly disruptive strategic experiments. Then they moved to lakes, which were continuous, incremental friction removal tests. And finally, they scaled their successful learnings into oceans across all their platforms. Using this framework, they tested some really bold hypotheses. For example, they found out that patients actually cared way more about raw appointment availability than seeing a specific doctor. They didn't just guess what these emotional humans wanted. They used this methodical pond, lake, and ocean approach to literally prove that for urgent care, patients just wanted the friction completely removed to get the absolute fastest appointment.
And the tangible ROI of that relentless test-and-learn culture? Get this. A staggering 150% increase in overall site appointment booking rates. 150%, that is a massive, transformational win. And it highlights the true power of experience management. When you combine the X data of deeply understanding human psychology with the O data of website conversions, and you continually optimize it all through a rigorous framework, the business results are absolutely off the charts.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Will your next major customer be a human driven by emotion or a machine parsing your APIs? And is your experience management actually ready for both? Honestly, that's the most critical lesson to take away from this explainer. The dual audience isn't coming, it's already here. Whether you are dealing with a deeply emotional human looking for a seamless digital journey or a highly logical AI agent scanning your code for answers, your experience management strategy has to evolve right now. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack all of this, and until next time, keep optimizing those experiences.